Bitch is a Bad Word podcast is for informational purposes only and reflects the opinions of the host and guests. It contains explicit content and discusses sensitive topics such as domestic abuse, sexual assault, and violence, which may be distressing to some listeners. Please take care of your emotional well-being while listening. While we strive for accuracy, we make no warranties about the completeness or reliability of the information, and any reliance on it is at your own risk. We do not endorse third-party views and are not liable for any defamatory claims. Listeners should conduct their own research and consult professionals before making decisions. If you or someone you know is in danger, please call 911 or contact the National Domestic Abuse Hotline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 800-799-7233 or text START, S-T-A-R-T, to 88788. We've got your back, besties. Caliber Studios has not independently verified the information you're about to hear. Welcome back to Bitch is a Bad Word. If you're new here, I'm Lindsay. I'm a mom with a bunch of kids and 0 fancy degrees, but I've got your back. I'm here to bring all the experts who have all the letters behind their names to help you build your survivor toolkit, to help you navigate your road through and out of domestic abuse. Today, I am so excited to have on the show Dr. Amelia Kelley. She's going to talk about gaslighting, and it's a topic that affects so many people, but it's often misunderstood. And in my situation, I found myself being gaslit so much that I was gaslighting myself, and I didn't really understand what was happening. You're often left confused, wondering what the actual is going on in your life. And if you've ever heard the term and wonder where it came from, I did some research, and it actually originates from the 1944 film Gaslight. In the movie, a husband manipulates his wife into doubting her reality by making subtle changes to their environment, like dimming the gas lights, and then denying that any of it has changed. It's a chilling depiction of psychological manipulation, and it gave us the term that's now used to describe a pervasive form of abuse. We're going to dive deep into what gaslighting looks like in real life, and more importantly, how to recover from it. Again, my guest is Dr. Amelia Kelley, a trauma-informed therapist and the author of Gaslighting Recovery for Women. Dr. Kelley is here to help us break it all down. What gaslighting is, how it impacts us, and how we can protect ourselves, and most importantly, heal. Dr. Amelia Kelley is a trauma-informed therapist who has conducted research on the effects of exercise on ADHD symptoms, as well as the effects of resiliency on PTSD. She's a trained hypnotherapist, art therapist, HSP therapist, EMDR-informed therapist, and meditation and yoga teacher. She is a presenter and writer in the science help field focusing on relationships, highly sensitive persons, trauma, motivation, healthy living, and adult ADHD. She's a guest podcast presenter focusing on women's issues and coping with the trauma of unhealthy relationships, as well as a coach and trainer for SAS Work-Life program in Cary, North Carolina, and a resident trainer for the NC Art Therapy Institute. Her practice is also currently part of the Traumatic Stress Research Consortium at the Kinsey Institute. Wow, you are a badass. Welcome to Bitch is a Bad Word. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I was kind of laughing a little as you're having to read all of it.
I'm like, you've got all the letters. I mean, you have been busy. That is so awesome. And you're author. I want to talk a little bit too and introduce, I know this topic is going to be about gaslighting, but the What I Wish I Knew book is super fascinating. Was this a patient of yours, or how did you two end up collabing on this book?
You know, out of all the books I've written so far and the books that will come, I think that will always be one of my favorites and has such a special place in my heart. So Kendall Ann actually had a podcast, she no longer does it anymore, called High Heels and Heartache. She had a kind of a similar vibe to you guys actually, and her mission was very similar. And she was in the area, in the Raleigh area. And I reached out to her and just said, hey, do you want to work together, meet each other? So I was on her podcast. in her house. Like this was pre-pandemic when we all actually were together when we were podcasting. And as I'm leaving, I just said to her, I said, you are hearing such amazing stories on your show. Have you ever thought of writing about them? And she said, I've actually thought about writing about my own story. And so it's her survivor story.
Okay.
And it was a wild experience because I'm so used to being in that therapist client role that this was different because she was the expert, which all of my clients are the expert on their experiences, but she was the expert on her experience. And then I was responding to what her journey was in a way where it's like the reader and myself are watching her experience on a movie screen. And then I'm saying, okay, let's pause the tape and say, here's the gaslighting. Here's the moment where they were love bombing. Here's this and here's that. So that hopefully the reader can identify these things quicker in their own experiences and not have to go. I mean, she was almost killed by her abuser. It was a really harrowing experience.
Oh, jeez. I mean, every woman who speaks out and anyone who's been in an abusive relationship, toxic relationship, you're in a dangerous position. You're in a dangerous place. And it's even, that's why it's not spoken about, right? That's why everyone's quiet. You don't share your experience because you're protecting your abuser and you're protecting yourself from, having to share. Once it's out there, you have to address it and acknowledge it. People look at you like, well, why are you still there? And then to be able to be brave enough to speak about it and share your experiences, I'm so impressed by women who are able to take the experience, own it, unpack it, and then put it out in the world for people like our listeners to really understand what they're going through because it's real. And
I couldn't agree more.
It's hard to do, but it's so important. And I think right now I feel like this is an epidemic that finally people are talking about. Finally, people are coming out and saying, you know what? I used to be afraid of the big bad wolf, but now I feel protected and safe. And hopefully, when you can name it, you can heal from it, as they say. So welcome to the show. I am so excited to dive into one of the most fascinating topics for me as I've traveled through and out of this abuse journey is gaslighting. And I had no idea what it was. I had heard the term, like many things, you just hear all these terms being thrown around and you're like, okay, well, I don't really understand what it means. So I want to dive into understanding what it is and all the forms that it comes in. So can you explain what gaslighting is and how it specifically affects women's mental health and self-esteem?
Absolutely. So, and I love that you highlighted where the word or term originated from. And ironically, did you know that the movie was based on a play?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So in the 1930s, there was a play in the UK that came out that the movie was then based on. So I would love to see the play. I can only imagine how they depicted that like up on, a stage.
Right.
So the way I see it though, it came in the early 1900s, but the term really was long coming because this is a behavior and a mechanism of control that has been in existence as long as humans have tried to gain control over each other. So yes, finally, we have a name for it. And essentially to break it down, and there's so many ways to look at it, which I'm sure we'll do today. What it really is a form of emotional abuse and control intended to confuse, throw off reality, and take power away from the person or group being targeted. And I was really specific to say group because I think that's something that is so crucial to understand too. You don't have to be in an intimate relationship to be gaslit.
Okay. That is important. So explain how. I mean, what is this? Is this somebody's goal, if you will? Is it premeditated? Is it somebody that has these personality types that we're kind of unpacking as well? Are they premeditated actions, or is it just how does one start the thought and the design to gaslight someone?
Right. Well, most gaslighters don't have like a spreadsheet in front of them planning out their attack. But I think that's probably part of what makes it so, disarming. So there are two different kind of avenues when it comes to gaslighting that I think is helpful to distinguish when we're talking about the intention behind it. And one is the more subconscious forms of gaslighting, and one is the malicious forms of gaslighting. And so to pull out the subconscious form of gaslighting, which we could decipher what it is, talk about it, and then it might not be a big part of this specific conversation because the intention, I think, is to empower survivors who are in abusive relationships.
Correct.
But subconscious gaslighting usually comes from a form of someone trying to self-protect, and generally because of long-seated insecurity, illness. A very good example would be substance abuse. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So someone who is deep in their substance abuse, they're deep in the dishonesty that substance abuse needs in order to continue to live on. Because when we pull and strip away secrecy from substance abuse, it doesn't have as much of a place. That's why admitting you have a problem is the first step. So when we look at someone who is in that spin, and I'm using substance abuse as a very solid example for subconscious gaslighting, usually things like, those aren't my bottles, those aren't my receipts, I wasn't at that place. It's in a way to protect their own illness and their ego and their vulnerability because of the illness, but it's not necessarily to maliciously hurt someone else, but that is the byproduct. That is the symptom of subconscious gaslighting. So subconscious gaslighting can be just as harmful, but it can be approached a little bit differently, meaning a subconscious gaslighter may be a little bit safer to confront about their gaslighting behaviors. And hopefully, when they're able to finally self-reflect enough, at some point they will be more likely to get help about the thing they are gaslighting about. However, malicious gaslighters that are steeped in personality disorder and abuse and narcissism, sociopathy, things of those nature are not always going to be as receptive to confrontation about their gaslighting, nor will they get to a point of admission or working on it.
So if you have a abuser who also has a substance abuse problem, which I have experience with, that they're working at both angles. There's a lot of talk, and I'm trying to work this out, as I try to heal from my life, is there's a lot of these types of personality have deep rooted trauma and deep seated issues. And so like, sometimes I'm like, so what, I'm meant to like love them through this, like while they're being abusive? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And I really want to make sure that we're clear when we're saying, okay, listen, you're going through this very traumatic, abusive relationship with somebody who does have deep-seated issues and childhood wounds that they need to sort out on their own, but they're taking them out on you because you love this person and because you're in a relationship or you're co-parenting or whatever it is. It's really hard to divide the two, like it's us and them. So we always talk about it on this show that this is a them problem, not a you problem, but it's easier said than done. So you are like, you wake up in the morning and you're like, this situation happened. We got in this fight, and then the gaslighting happens pretty instantaneous, right? Like it's a defense mechanism that they're going to put onto you or to protect, like, no, that didn't happen. Or you did this, or there's so much he said, she said. And I find that you're usually, if you're an abused person, you're so damn tired that you just give in to whatever it is they're saying, and you're left constantly confused and gaslighting yourself. So what is the approach? What is the defense that somebody that's currently living with their abuser or their manipulator or their gaslighter, what is the defense that they can put up? Do you just, I'm not having this conversation, walk away? Because you're not going to convince them otherwise, right? They're like inviting you into also a further argument.
This is a huge multi-layered question. I can't wait to answer it. So first of all, You said something I think is really important. I don't want to miss. And you said after a period of being gaslit or being abused, sometimes someone can just tend to get tired.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to distinguish. We've probably all heard of fight, flight, and freeze.
Yes.
But the fourth F type is fawn. Have you heard
I
that
have
term
not.
before?
What does that mean?
Okay. So we know when we encounter, let's say the trauma is abuse. Okay. So first line of attack often for most people, and in research animals as well, is to fight, is to do something to defend yourself. When that doesn't work, we generally will try to flee or get away. And this is not in any specific order. We're all different. We can't organize how we respond to trauma because it is just a response. It's a survival mechanism. Now, if fight and flight don't work, often freeze is a response where you're just stuck, right? You're not moving, you're not mobile, you're not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I find a lot of people get into a blame and shame spiral with freeze, like, why didn't I do something? That's when, if none of those things work, fawn follows, and fawn looks like the exhaustion you just spoke about. I throw my hands up. There's nothing I can do. Nothing's going to work. Nothing will, they're not going to listen to me. They're just going to keep gaslighting. If those things don't work, however, fawn is a very natural response because eventually you do grow weary and you do grow tired of working so hard to try to protect yourself or try to convince someone. What it can look like is codependency patterns. It can look like a lack of emotional individuation, which is very crucial when protecting yourself from abuse, is to have your own opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And if the person is not allowing you to have your own opinions, it's a good indicator that they are not a safe person. It's probably one of the red flags you guys have spoken about before. Yes, exactly. Yes. And unfortunately, what can happen after a period of time, and gaslighters love the fawn response, because after a period of time, if you lose your emotional individuation, you kind of lose the will to have a different opinion, and your reality just so perfectly morphs into the reality of the gaslighter. And that's exactly what they want.
That's fascinating because they want you to be in that isolation, the world in the silo where you only see the world for how they want you to see it through their lens. And when you're in that reality and you're fawning, you are very malleable and they can manipulate the hell out of you. And
absolutely,
it is really hard. For me, I have a strong personality at the beginning of this relationship with this person. And I was always telling, this is how I feel. And this is how these are my convictions and whatever. And then over time, and he supported those at the beginning. And then over time, I guess is it gaslighting where they're like, well, I don't really agree with that. That's, that's not how you should feel. Or they start sort of changing your view and getting into your head, and everybody around you is crazy. It's, listen to me, your mom, your friends, everybody else, they have no idea what's good for you. Is that also gaslighting when they start telling you, altering the perception of the people that are in your life that they're wrong?
Yes. And there was a piece at the beginning that I think is important to recognize that's not gaslighting. And then when does it shift? Having a conflict is not gaslighting. Having different opinions is not gaslighting. Disagreeing completely, quite honestly, remembering something differently because we have filters as humans and different experiences are all not gaslighting. When it becomes gaslighting, however, is when you in your conviction and you in your reality know something to be true, and the person will minimize your feelings, devalue, make you question your sources. They can even go so far as to use things like stereotyping, especially, you had mentioned something about the effect of gaslighting on women. The stereotyping of a woman as being emotional, too sensitive. Actually, the term hysteria, I don't know if you know this, is a form of medical gaslighting. It was based on the diagnosis of different female disorders engaged in the ovaries, and when we think about hysterectomy, hysteria, they're connected.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Wait,
Right.
So you were, whatever it is you're going through, was this be like menopause or whatever? The doctor's like, no, you're just hysterical.
Mm-hmm.
You're crazy. Yep. I swear to
Mm-hmm.
God, if like one more man calls a woman crazy because she has an opinion or she has ovaries, I can't do it. There would be a lot of like, oh, it's that time of the month, or, oh, you must be this. And I would be like, we've kind of talked about it before. Like maybe I just have less tolerance for your bullshit right now because I am in a particular part of my cycle, and I'm going to stick up for myself. And then you sort of cycle through and, give in. I found myself giving in a lot to an argument that I could tell was when I was being gaslit, because I didn't want to be called crazy, or I didn't want to be called all the names. So I would, I guess, as we've just learned, fawn.
That was fawning.
That's fawning. I think that's fascinating. So in your book specifically talks about the effects that gaslighting has on women. So why do you think women are particularly vulnerable to this form of abuse?
Well, and I like that you distinguish, the fact that the book was for women because of the fact that marginalized groups, or groups that have been historically put under control of another entity, are going to be more targeted. Okay. And so, as I was saying, medical gaslighting, for example, came from somewhere for a reason. And we can also look at, I was saying groups in the very beginning of our chat today, we can look at things like marginalized groups such as racialized gaslighting. We can look at even political gaslighting. This is a very apropos time to be bringing this up. But we can actually thank politics for the influx of people even knowing about this term in the pop culture. Because we as a nation, we're all gaslit. So many years ago, but not that many years ago.
Yes.
I feel the need to not bring up examples, but I'm sure we can both imagine many of them.
Yes.
You didn't see that. There were way more people there than you think. So just as a little example. So the thing of it is that anytime you have an entity who wants to keep control, when someone feels like they're losing or slipping out of control, and who has been gaining a lot of power lately? Who has been equating themselves into like a much more equal stance in society? Women. We're a threat, And so if anything, we become so much more targeted because of that. I also think it was very important to distinguish the impact on women as well, because of the fact that women are more statistically likely to be abused. We know this.
Right.
Men, it's 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men, 1 in 4 men. The men are more likely to be emotionally abused, however. Women, unfortunately, as we know, are much more a danger of physical abuse. And to me, it's a very important moment and a cry out to say, we need to stop this now. And I think it is also, if we look on the heels of all of this cascade of what has happened in our society, we look at, as I was saying, the way that we as a society have been gaslit. And then we look at the Me Too movement that came, which was, if anything, one of the loudest bullhorns ever to signal gaslighting of women. And
so true.
Right. And so it was time. It was time we have this conversation. And the irony, I remember as we were ready to release, because it takes a little time to get a book out, and my editor reaching out to me and saying, did you know that gaslighting is the word of the year this year?
Oh, wow.
I said, what?
Let's
yeah. Well, no, it was already planned. It was like within a month that the book was planning on coming out.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just like, it is time. It is time we blow the lid and have this conversation.
We really do need to have this conversation, because it is such an important conversation to have, especially with women that are in an abusive relationship, because that manipulation, from my experience, is what keeps you there longer. So if you don't have any idea what's happening to you, and you truly have questions and doubting your own reality and your own perspective of whatever argument or situation had, you feel crazy. And when you feel crazy,
Right.
you're like, it's hard to come out of that and admit like, okay, well, maybe I have this all wrong. I would doubt so many arguments. Like maybe I'm the problem. Maybe if I had just done this, and so for a long time, and as the cycle of abuse happens, it's not like every single day you're being bombarded by some crazy gaslighting. It usually,
Right.
it'll be,
well, you need a little spice of reward to stay in the cycle.
Exactly.
Right.
And then there's like an apology or what happens. And you're like, well, maybe it's me. And so if I can just work on myself and if I can just maybe I should just tone down the opinions and maybe I should just not come, like maybe he hasn't had enough coffee. Maybe he needs more sleep, whatever your excuse is that you're going to give the person when you're in that reward phase of the cycle. Then you have that break and the honeymoon phase starts again. And you're looking at them in that like rose-colored lens of, you know what? It's not so bad after all until it happens again. And then when it happens, you're like, again, questioning your reality. And when you question your reality or you have kids, you got to get to school and it's not as easy as just getting up and spending the day sorting through the shit that you just went through. You have to move on and handle your regular life. So when you're in a manipulated situation, we say mind fucked. Like that's the only way to describe it is like your own mind feels so upside down. So I'm so glad that you're talking about this, that you're getting out there and putting this in front of women specifically, because we need help with it. So we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the emotional toll of gaslighting and the first steps that you need to take in healing. So we'll be right back, besties. Hey, besties, it's Lindsay from Bitch is a Bad Word podcast, and Cozy Earth sent me the most amazing sheets ever. They are soft, they are silky, they keep me cool, and the color is so stunning. They've got your back with a 40% off coupon using our code word besties at checkout. They've got sheets, towels, pajamas, everything you need to turn your home into a sanctuary at CozyEarth.com. If they offer you a post-purchase survey, let them know that you heard about Cozy Earth right here on Bitch is a Bad Word podcast. Check them out, CozyEarth.com, 40% off using our code word besties. Welcome back. We have the most awesome expert on gaslighting today, Dr. Amelia Kelley. She comes to us from North Carolina and joining us today, talking about all the ways that your abuser is taking control of your mind, manipulating you through gaslighting. And we are here to put some tools in your toolbox so that you can understand what you're going through and most importantly, heal from this type of abuse, because it's the psychological abuse we talk about a lot. The physical scars, they heal, but you're inside your own mind every day, all day long. And if you allow it to penetrate your brain, you really do question your reality, question whether or not you're a good person, question whether or not you were even abused. And after hopefully you're out, hopefully you're safe. After the bruises and broken bones and whatever awful shit you've been through heal, you still have to come back and find yourself and get to know who you are in the true reality and not somebody's altered reality. So what are some effective strategies for women when they're beginning their recovery process after they experience gaslighting?
Well, I think one of the things that is important for recovering is also one of the most important parts of even being able to leave in the first place. Okay. And that's understanding that gaslighting works best in isolation. It works best when it's undetected. And that's why the more we talk about it and the more we uncover it, the less power it holds. And so I would say if you suspect that you have been gaslight, if you feel like you are confused or the way that you're feeling in your body and your brain and your heart and your soul, and just like the reaction you have around this person feels like fear, or it feels like it's misaligning from what they say, oh, we're fine, but you're not feeling fine. Checking in, whether it be with a loved one, a friend, someone who can support you, or really what I would recommend, obviously, is a trauma-informed therapist. And I say obviously for this reason. Someone in that role doesn't have a stake in the game. So ideally, the person who is feeling so confused and thrown off is going to feel more empowered to completely unfold what's going on. So as a therapist who works with these folks quite often, I will honestly encourage my clients, show me the text messages, let me hear the voicemails, read me the things that you guys have had back and forth. Like, there is no shame in proofing what has happened. Mm-hmm. If anything, in my book, I have kind of like a log that I encourage people to go through, where they will literally write down things that have happened to them, how it made them feel, and the details that they connected. Because what can happen with gaslighting is you can become so thrown off by the barrage of misinformation that you don't know how to organize up from down. And being able to organize up from down is so much more difficult when the parts of your brain that are designed for preservation and connection and empowerment are slowly being pruned off in place of survival and agreeability and just, I hate to say agreeability and appeasement, but it's almost like we know when we stop fighting sometimes, it feels like it's better, but it's not. It's just that these eggshells we're just kind of tiptoeing around.
Mm-hmm. You're still in the upside down clown show, but
yes, you're still upside down, inside out. It's all over the place. And so if you feel like you are being gaslit, the very first thing to do is to check in on whether it happened. Okay. And so this might look like reading my book. This might look like connecting with a therapist. This might look like listening to a podcast like this. It's okay. And it's not neurotic at all to check on everything. I sometimes I won't tell the whole story, but I was very obviously professionally gaslit once. Like, it was so obvious. It kind of made me laugh, but it also, I felt it in my body. I got this flush in my system. My heart started pounding. The second I got off the phone with this person, I immediately called a trusted person that I knew and I loved. And I said, okay, can I just tell you what just happened? Like, is this gaslighting? That's so healthy. It is so healthy to check in as soon as possible. Because you had mentioned the thing about bruises versus the emotional impact. Mm-hmm. We need to recognize that research shows the brain fires the same way. If you're being emotionally neglected or emotionally abused versus physically abused, the same pain centers of the brain fire. Okay.
Okay. That's super fascinating, because a lot of people question whether or not they're in an abused relationship because they haven't been beaten. And I really want to get that message out there in the world that, like what you just said, you are an abused woman. There is variables, right? We talk about them all, but emotional abuse is domestic violence. We have to say it out loud.
It is.
You are you're a statistic now. So please recognize it. So I'm so happy you said that. Because it sticks with you. I mean, it doesn't go away. So
no.
What do we do? So
and it does alter your perception of yourself. I think that's one of the most dangerous parts of gaslighting, is that having confidence and awareness of what you want and what you don't want is the cornerstone of being able to decide whether or not to stay in a relationship. So abusers know this, and they will weaponize gaslighting specifically to keep you trapped in a relationship. And not just gaslighting as far as, this isn't how this happened, not just misinformation about the past, but also gaslighting you, to your point about the people who are there to support you. Everyone thinks you're crazy. Everyone knows I'm good for you. Why would you do that? You're going to hurt your mother's feelings if you leave me. I'm just bringing up examples.
Oh no, those are all real.
This is all gaslighting, when they're taking reality and twisting it up so that it works to fit their narrative. And that's why, again, not being isolated is so important. So if you're in a relationship with someone, and I'm not saying someone who's an introvert who doesn't necessarily want to be out in like big ruckus parties or something. I'm saying someone who strips you of the things that empower you and the people that empower you. In What I Wish I Knew, Kendall Ann's abuser started guilting her into not going to her dance classes because why would she want to leave him on a Wednesday night? Wouldn't she want to hang out with him? It's this like stripping away of your individuality that primes you to be gaslit. And the gaslighting can even be, you obviously don't care about me because you're choosing to do this thing that's good for you. That's not reality, folks. That is a complete manipulation of the narrative.
That is so important to hear too, because that I was in that same situation. It went so far as even going back to work. Going back to work was
That's common.
Big form of manipulation. And I was being told that I would be a child abuser if I left my children with a nanny or a daycare. And I believed it. I was like, well, I guess, I mean, it makes sense. Like, why would I leave? And then there was always talks, this is sort of going back to our original conversation about like controlling the masses. It was like this very patriarchal conversation that would stem all the way back to the Carnegie family, that the only reason that women women were women's lib and the empowerment of women was so that the Carnegie family could tax both genders. And I'm like, that all makes sense. Okay. And it was like, women don't really need to work. Women need to be home and taking care of the family. And that's like the primary role. And I subscribed. I liked it. It made sense to me. But again, when we talk about going back to what all these forms of abuse are, when you lose your autonomy, when you are financially controlled and you don't have your own money, then you're even further down under their thumb. They can control you more. They can gaslight you more. And I found in my relationship, nothing was ever truly closed out. And I found that they would put things in what I call the narc vault. And, whatever happened would come back out later. And you're like, well, I don't even know what we're doing right now. And then after this fight, there would be this, I don't know, is this what stonewalling is? Where you're completely ignored and you've offended that person so much. Like, how dare you question their reality? And then they ignore you. So how do you recover from that? How do these little cycles of the gaslighting, stonewalling, what does it look like?
Okay. So let's use your example of going back to work. If say, for instance, someone wants that and you bring that up to your partner and and just a quick note, if someone listening doesn't have their own money, that is okay as long as you have awareness of the money. I do think that's an important distinction.
Okay, yes.
For those who are not working, please don't feel like, oh no, now I'm going to be vulnerable, but you need awareness and ability to have a say so. But I digress.
No, that's important.
So let's go to the individual who wants to go back to work, which is a completely valid desire. And you may be met with someone who disagrees. Maybe your partner doesn't agree and doesn't want you to, but instead they are vilifying your desires. And then they, as you said, stonewall you. So stonewalling, which comes out of Gottman's research lab, is when someone specifically not only doesn't talk to you, but almost pretends you don't exist, which can be incredibly demoralizing. And it has a direct hit on your immune system and your confidence.
Oh, wow.
So it can actually degrade your immune system's ability to fight infections. And the reason, if you think of it, is very survival mechanism, because someone who is not part of the tribe should not survive.
Oh, jeez. Man.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
So that's why stonewalling is incredibly, incredibly harmful. So let's say, for example, they're stonewalling you and they will only come back to you and speak to you when you agree, okay, which is the whole point of the gaslighting. So going back to step one, which is, am I being gaslit? Let's say you recognize you're being gaslit. Step number two, this is where the delineation between subconscious and malicious gaslighting gets very important. This is where, if you feel that you are being subconsciously gaslit by someone who is open to hearing you, bring it up. Bring it to their attention. Let them know what's happening. Let's say, for instance, it is not, and this is malicious, and this is a repetitive behavior. The person who is gaslighting you is not who you bring it up to, because they speak a different language than you. They will not agree with you. If anything, they will double down on their gaslighting efforts and call you a gaslighter.
Yes.
Right? So they're gonna like triple attack.
Yep.
So instead, you are going to again find the outside source, someone to support. Another thing that I think is so crucial and makes it more likely that hopefully you can stop this cycle from continuing, because unfortunately sometimes the only way to stop it is to not be in it, is to reinforce your relationship with yourself. I have a 4-step guide for overcoming gaslighting and increasing confidence in Psychology Today that you can check out if you want on this.
Okay. We love to.
And in those steps, I really, really zero in on the importance of your relationship with yourself. So, we're talking about things like going back to work. The reason it's so threatening to a gaslighter is because it increases your independence and your relationship with yourself. If you're in a situation where you're being gaslit and it's kind of a systemic situation, I would definitely encourage you to find a safe person, whether it be, HR or whoever, to report it if you can. That's not going to happen necessarily within an intimate relationship, but can it? Because technically, if we look at legal ramifications, reaching out to a lawyer, finally being like, enough is enough. I'm being gaslit. I don't know up from down. I'm mind fucked. I never get to say fuck on my podcast, so I'm going to say it here.
Oh, you can say as many fucks as you want on our show.
I mean, I probably could because it's my own podcast. I just never have. So I'm like, but the thing of it is that moment, you going to a lawyer, for instance, and saying enough is enough, or you finally signing that separation agreement, or you grabbing your go bag and going to your support person's house, that is kind of like your version of HR. That is your version of calling the authorities and saying enough is enough. But I think we really need to understand gaslighters who are maliciously gaslighting, especially, do not speak the same language. They will not agree.
There is probably no Rosetta Stone for narcissistic gaslighting language, but maybe there should be. So we need to understand.
No, we could do a whole nother episode on that.
And we will. Oh my gosh, this is such valuable information. So we're going to take a little break, and coming up, we're going to how to recognize, is therapy good for you with your manipulator, and these little bestie tools that we're going to put in your toolbox. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wayne Callies, and I played Dr. Sarah Tancredi on Prison Break.
And I'm Paul Edelstein, and I played Agent Paul Kellerman on Prison Break. Please join us on our rewatch podcast, Prison Breaking, with Sarah and Paul.
We're going to have all kinds of guests and never-before-told stories, so follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can subscribe to our watch party on the link there. We can't wait to see you there.
And follow us on Instagram at Prison Break Podcast. See you there.
So I want to understand, or I really want to focus on that. You said something so important. You're dealing with somebody who is not speaking your language, or even maybe a language that you should ever understand. And we talk about therapy. We talk about, what our besties need to do to get safe and help. If you're in the relationship, though, there's the jury's out. I tried to go to therapy on my own, and I tried to go to couples therapy, and the freaking therapist, he broke the therapist. She literally kicked us out. And I'll tell you offline who she was, because you probably know her. She was so gaslit, and so he broke her. And as we're leaving the therapist's office, and this is a fascinating story I've told before, but I'll tell you quickly. She wanted to be paid in cash. And so we would go to the ATM. It was my job to go to the ATM and get the cash for the therapy session. So whatever the therapy cost, it was in 20s. And it worked out to be very even.
God, was she evading the IRS or something?
I am not here to unpack her accounting practices. I have no idea, but she wanted to be paid in cash. And she did not take insurance. And she did it out of her house. He pays her, and then she goes to the back or kitchen or wherever, and she comes back, and she's like, it's short. And he's like, no, it's not. And I'm looking at him well, she's like, it's short $20. It's not like short for the whole thing. And he's like, it's absolutely not short. And she's counting in front of him. And he's like, well, you went in the back, you stole the money. That's, you know, and I'm like, give her the $20. Like, come on.
He was legit. That is like almost as bad as what they did in the movie with the gaslight.
Yes,
it's like
I'm like,
so flagrantly gaslighting.
You just gaslit our therapist. And so she's like done with us. We had many sessions that never went well. And she kicks us out. And as we're leaving, she comes behind us outside and she goes, you'll never make it. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, he broke.
I think he did break her.
Like, holy shit. From all, like, the gaslighting. And he probably just, I mean, there was every single time we would go to therapy.
I mean, she wasn't wrong, but
she wasn't wrong. And we didn't make it. Just, I mean, I should send her a note. But so she maybe
you're
she can,
right.
You're right. You can like forgive yourself.
Here's $20. No, I'm just kidding.
It was so embarrassing. And you're just like, why would she steal $20? She's got a line out the freaking door. She's booked for the year.
Yeah.
She's not trying to steal our money. Like, this is nuts. So, but every time we would go to therapy, I would share my truth, whatever my grievance was, whatever I was working through. And he would sit there and say, no, it didn't happen like that. No, it didn't. Like, so he's gaslighting me. So my question really is there are times that couples therapy, when you're dealing with an abuser or somebody with a personality type like this, that it's not effective because you're going to just be going like spinning your wheels, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I will say there is one little slice of therapy. There's like a specific method that is supposed to be used for these circumstances. I do not practice this because I feel strongly about safety in the room.
Okay.
So it is not advised to create a space for the abuser to play out their abuse.
Okay.
And that is one of the really important factors when it comes to a therapy setting with a couple. I mean, if anything, good couples counseling shouldn't even be about coming in and just unleashing and reporting everything that happened. Good couples counseling, in my opinion, starts with what's the dynamic in the room? How are we feeling in the room? Who's regulated? Who's not? Who's feeling safe? Who's not right here, right now? But we all know everyone's like, okay, what am I going to bring up this week?
Right.
I do think having a therapist who is okay with confrontation with their client is really important. And that is not always common. I mean, there was a couple that I worked with who I worked with for a very long time. And it was quite obvious after some time that that the husband was gaslighting his wife. And eventually I got to the point, I didn't kick them out and yell at them down the street, but I did say, I need to let you know that, part of this, our ground rule is that we all feel safe. And I'm recognizing that she does not feel safe in these spaces anymore. So we need to discontinue sessions because I can't condone that in this therapeutic setting. I did offer them a referral for mediation, which is a different form of, conflict resolution. It's not the same as, couples counseling. But I will say it's not uncommon for therapists to feel, I don't know, guilt, fear. What are they going to do? What's going to happen if I stop working with them? Is the person going to be okay? But I urge people to understand that you can actually do harm in a counseling room if, as a therapist, you're creating a space for someone to be abused. If you're creating a space where you're feeding into the gaslighting because it's hard to discern the truth. It's really tricky. And one other thing about therapy that is a little different too, gaslighters will weaponize therapy as well and use it as a way to say that you are crazy or that there is something wrong with you or that therapy's not working because you come back feeling more self-assured. You come back feeling like something is wrong and you don't look the way the gaslighter wants you to look after therapy, and they're going to blame the therapy or the therapist, or will even take things the therapist says and gaslight you in the middle of an argument and twist what the therapist says. So that can be really tricky.
Yeah. So you're on this hamster wheel. You're like Marty Bird is that famous scene where he's like totally lining the therapist's pockets so that she can gaslight his wife. It's pretty fascinating. So we know that there's a challenge that you're going to face if you try to do couples therapy while you're in a relationship with your abuser. So individual therapy is always recommended, some sort of way to identify that you're gaslit, work through those steps to say, this is what happened, this is the reality, and this is how I feel. And
Yes.
I say so often, it's so important to find a trauma-informed therapist.
Absolutely.
Because they are going to understand how to help you. And so I want to talk about success stories, because I am a show about hope as well, that, outside, when you get through this and you can look at it for what it is and identify it, and then you're empowered. Do you have success stories that you can talk to us about with women that have successfully, navigated gaslighting?
Absolutely. Those are the best. I mean, they're all really the best because it's all part of the same process, but it is nice to see what can happen when someone goes through the discomfort of leaving. I have to say, even if it's the right thing, we all know there's going to be cycles of doubt and grief and sadness, and that's normal. And I encourage you, if anyone's listening and they have left their abuser or they're about to leave their abuser, just because you feel sadness it's not an indicator that you're supposed to go back.
Thank you.
It's just an indication, correct, that you have made the right choice, and it's just a grief process. You had said earlier about your diagnosis. I've seen that with clients of mine who have come in on a laundry list of medications. And when we worked on their kind of independence and self-assurance and they've gotten out, I've seen medical diagnosis resolved. I've seen people go off of their antidepressants. I've seen people get into relationships that are loving and trusting and safe, and they will come in and spot check those relationships with me. Like, wait, is this really normal? Like, is it normal to have them listen to me so much? Am I talking too much? Are they giving me too much assurance? It's like, no, that's normal. That's a beautiful thing. And so it's such an honor to see people go through all these different steps, even from as early as understanding you're being gaslit is a huge step, all the way to finding, comfort and trust. And it doesn't just have to be romantic relationships. It can also be reestablishing trusting relationships with friends and family that maybe you had been isolated from, or even trusting yourself to go out into the world and try things that maybe you never had done before, like starting a podcast and talking to anyone, out there who's interested in learning more about this. It's all about post-traumatic growth.
That is such an important term, because there is, you have, at any point, we're trying to build a show where people stop at the first gaslight. That's your first red flag.
Yes.
And we say flag on the play, eject from the game. Don't, it's not going to change. They are not, that's just a prelude to your future. So please recognize the sign, know that it's okay to get up, walk away. I want to empower people. We always talk about this. I was always told to be nice and just be nice. Just sit there, say nothing. You live in the South. You're everybody has to be nice. And
I'm from New York.
Okay, so you're I don't want to be nice at all. I love that. I'm fuck being nice. Get up and walk away. You can get up from dinner. You can get up from a meeting. You can get up. The second
set the boundary.
Set the boundary. The second you feel like this isn't going right, and it feels, I want to empower women to feel more intuitive, feel those feelings, recognize the feelings, walk away and feel good about it. And before you're broken down. And then once you're broken down and you're, crawling your way out of this, because it's going to be hard. It's not easy, but you can do hard things. You can come back to a new life that is full of hope and resilience and love. And you can be in a great relationship, and you can rebuild your relationships, like you said, with the people that you were isolated from. And you can learn and change. And then you have this, all this, you can be in totally empowered to go back and do all the things you were told you weren't capable of doing. And
Absolutely.
we have this one precious life, right? Like and just because you're in the shit right now doesn't mean that that's how it's going to be forever. So I
Right.
love the idea and the inspiring words of hope that you can come back and just reclaim your badassery as a woman and just do really cool things. And so thank you so much for sharing with us. I do want some final takeaways. I'm going to take a last little break, and then I want you to share with our besties some resources. And we love to say, like, what's one tool that they can put in their toolbox for recovery. So we'll be right back. Okay, we're back with Dr. Amelia Kelley. This has been the most fascinating interview and discussion about gaslighting and resilience. And so I'd love for you to share with our besties some resources, your books, what women need to do to reclaim their voices, reclaim their power, and travel down that road to awesomeness.
Well, thank you again, honestly, for creating this space. I think it's so important, and I'm so honored to be part of the beginning of your journey of this kick-ass podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think one of the very important things to remember is that your area has local resources. So I think, there's a tendency to look up things like the hotline, which is amazing, and a lot of really great national websites, but don't forget local. So like, for instance, here in Raleigh, we have Interact, which is very, Interact and Compass, which are in our area that will serve local women and men, but, quite often women who need to leave their abusers and want to get out safely. So I would say to look into your local area first and foremost. I also want to, highlight the very heartbreaking reality that a lot of people fear leaving their abusers because of children and pets. Mm-hmm. And so that is something that I have been very inspired by over, I'd say, the last 5 years. I do think there's a stronger focus on the importance of finding safe havens and people and organizations that can support those who need to leave with their pets. So know that is not unreasonable. That is absolutely something that makes it so hard to leave. Mm-hmm. I do, obviously I have a handful of books and a podcast and website. You can reach out to me anytime you want. But I think, if I was going to you said something about like a tool in the toolbox, aside from things like reconnecting with yourself and using grounding techniques for your body and the value of therapy, I think the thing that I love for people to really experiment with the most is this idea of the word, and I don't mean it in the over sensationalized way, the word no, as if you are sitting at a poker table. Okay. So anytime you put a hand out and it's different and it's a boundary and it's you either saying your version of no or your version of I disagree, instead of getting overly fixated on how to make sure the other person is okay with your hand, watch their reaction. So earlier you had mentioned something about the first time someone gaslights, get the hell out. Mm-hmm. And that can absolutely, and most often is the case. But I also encourage you to watch. If you bring up the gaslighting and you say, stop it, this is not okay, I don't condone this, the person will let you know who they are through their reaction. So if they're willing to take ownership and they're willing to change and they're willing to adjust, that is a form of let's work on this relationship. That's not a form of abuse. I think that's a very important thing to distinguish. So watch their hand, sit back, watch what they do, and then act accordingly. Instead of you always trying to figure out how to make them feel better, just pay attention to how you react to how they're reacting. I hope that makes sense.
It
I
does.
think that's so important.
It is. I love that. That is such solid advice. And again, we have to recognize how we feel. I mean, we're attuned, right, to people. And so when you're tuned into somebody, if they're making you feel off, there's a good reason. We need to trust ourselves more.
And that's where intuition lies. That's where your gut instinct is. And it's there and it's always present.
And your gut and your brain are connected. We're learning all of this. Like if you have that feeling in your gut, your brain is also processing that, saying, like these are red flags. We're flagging, and listen to it, and it's okay. So I love this conversation, and I thank you so much. You're an absolute badass. We have
Thank
a
you.
group of women that we've put together in a series that down the line, I want to get everybody back together somewhere. And it's the BFF segment, Bitches Fighting for
Yay.
Freedom, and
Love that.
helping all of these beautiful besties that we have listening to the show, and really empowering. And you're so welcome back on the show. I can't wait. I've got many other questions for you on many other topics. And your book, I don't have a copy of it to show. I don't know if you have to. You want to hold it up?
It is right here.
Okay.
Here we
Gaslighting
go.
Recovery for Women. I love it.
Yeah.
And your
Thank
Instagram
you.
is Dr. Amelia Kelley.
My name, Dr. Amelia Kelley. Yep. Super active on there. And my website, ameliakelly.com, I have access to everything from my Psychology Today blog, my meditations on Insight Timer, my kind of support mentorship through Abundant Academy. It's all there. You can just go to my website.
Amazing. Well, make sure to check out the show notes for all the links to Dr. Kelley's book, resources, and tools to help you in your journey. And remember, you're not alone. There's power in telling your truth. And you don't need to learn this new gaslighting language, by the way. Just saying. So thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Bitch is a Bad Word. And we'll see you next time. Okay, welcome back, besties. We are going to do our favorite segment, Texties from the XDs. I'm trying to find one very specifically targeted to a gaslighting situation. There's so many. And this one was just a conversation a long time ago where I start saying, I don't blame you for my bad decisions. And then I say, cool, then stop believing your lies. Which lies? I've never lied to you except about the stripper, so fuck off. Literally never. You don't even know what you threw away. And I said, garbage is all I throw away. He says, most men would have dumped you and your sideshow long before I did. I said, probably not. We shall see. And I say, I'm an awesome woman. I put up with your shit for a long time hoping you'd change, but you didn't. No, you stayed because I was rich, let's be honest. You're just a common whore. God bless you. And I said, thank you. And he said, that's the woman that I know. And I said, yes, the funny one, of course. And then I go on to sort of say, this was how our life went. And he just keeps replying, whore, I never cheated on you. It didn't happen. I pursued it, but who knows if I would have gone through it with it. I doubt I would have looking back on it today. Bet you don't think deeply, though. And he says, I certainly had every reason to. Most men would have never hooked up with you, much less stayed. And I said, that's kind of a joke. I definitely feel men would have hooked up with me. I'm a wonderful woman. And I was being cheeky, and they still want to now that I'm back on the market. My dance card is pretty full. And he replies, oh, I'm sure you're spreading those legs again. Once a whore. And then that's the end of that story. Constantly telling me that I'm wrong, telling me that my reality wasn't happening, gaslighting. It's happened. I was gaslit all the time. So that is our segment today on Texties from the XDs. Please do reach out on our socials because I would love for you to share your texties from your XD and I'll read them on the show. And you can share it anonymously if you'd like to have us play them on a voicemail. You can call our number 331-BITCHES and leave us a voicemail or a text with your texties from your XDs. And I'd love for you to reach out to us. So we're here for you. We got you. Remember, there is no safety in staying silent. So if you are in immediate danger whatsoever, please check your local resources for shelters in your area. Like we talked about with Dr. Kelley, There are shelters that will accept pets. Obviously, you need to keep your family, your children safe. Crash on a friend's couch, phone 911, and do whatever you need to do to get safe, because that is the most important thing to us. And thanks for tuning in to Bitch is a Bad Word. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with somebody who needs it, because we are building this amazing resource toolbox for you besties, and we got your back. We drop our episodes every Tuesday. So we'll see you next Tuesday, bitches. Bye. Please like, share, and subscribe to all things Bitch is a Bad Word. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. Our Instagram is Bitch is a Bad Word Pod. Our TikTok and YouTube is Bitch is a Bad Word. And our phone number is 331-BITCHES. Please do reach out, like, share, and subscribe so you can keep up with all things Bitch is a Bad Word. Thank you for joining us. This has been a Caliber Studios production. Our editor is Kevin Mackler. Our producer and booker is Noea Murphy. Our art design was created by Kevin Roche and Eric Johnson. Our music was composed by Drew Kevorkian. Our social media is managed by Jade Taylor and Samantha Bunting. And our cinematography is by Joe Melson and Alexander Krasinski. Thanks so much, besties. We'll see you next Tuesday. Bitches being bad.